ask.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The measures in this bill will cost every Australian in one way or another, and it is, in spite of what we've heard, radical change. And as we heard the chair of the Minerals Council of Australia, Tanya Constable, say at the Minerals Council dinner, let's not sugarcoat it. These industrial relations changes are some of the most extreme interventionist workplace changes that have ever been proposed in Australia. So the measures, as I said, will cost all Australians in one form or another. And already the cost has been estimated to cost Australians at least $9 billion. That's $9 billion, Deputy Speaker. That's just the first rough calculation. And an extraordinary that the government is quite happy that that's exactly what these laws will do. They've admitted it. In fact, increased costs for Australians for everyday goods and services that they rely on currently. But when we know that the government is intent on making those same Australians pay at least another $9 billion or more at a time where cost of living, costs of doing business, energy costs, inflation, staff and housing shortages are such critical issues for Australians, there is no doubt that this will have that extra $9 billion at least. I think that's the tip of the iceberg. And there will be detrimental impacts with potential disruptions in the labour market itself, particularly in resource-intense states like Western Australia. I think we have no doubt that there will be major impacts, and we do know that the minister can make further changes with a stroke of his pen in at least 32 instances throughout this bill. It will be, which concerns me greatly, a legal nightmare for small business owners and employers generally. It is a very and incredibly complex bill. You try being that small business trying to make your way through these 800-odd pages. How does this affect me and my workplace and my business? You know, it's complex. It is incredibly complex. It significantly increases red tape, and it is costly in spite of what those opposite think. It is a direct attack on tradies and other independent contractors on labour hire, and as I said, the WA resources and mining sector and the gig economy and casual employment. And as well as the casual employees, for instance, in the IT area, the specialists who may have to take a 20% cut in their income as a result of this bill. It's actually an attack on their choices and their employment options that they choose that are right for them and work, even in that business or sector. It's the same on casual employment. It inevitably means fewer opportunities, particularly in small to medium businesses, for our young people and for those in rural and regional Australia that rely on these particular jobs, particularly in smaller businesses. It means fewer opportunities for older people who we are trying to get to come back into work and continue to work on terms that suit them as well. It's a two-way street. It certainly will not help employees who specifically want to work and do casual work and get that 25% casual rate. In so many instances in my electorate, I see the impact of the great relationships between employers and employees. It's a mutually beneficial relationship built around what suits both. It's not just a one-way street. It suits both of those parties. Well, there's going to be fewer of those jobs available, and this will give unprecedented rights of entry into business, and particularly some of our smaller businesses, by the unions themselves. And they won't have rights when, without notice, the union can arrive on their doorstep. They'll have no choice but to do as they're told. And unfortunately, I see this as a strategy that embeds conflict in our workplaces, where we've currently got individuals and their employees and employers working together to actually get done what needs doing and to actually remunerate people for the work that they do. I meet so many employers who work so closely with their employees and are incredibly grateful that those people work with them, because they cannot achieve for that business without their really good employees. And just to actually have that approach that actually separates the two is just appalling. And I understand that this could also affect the disability sector in regional and rural areas. Again, we're trying desperately to provide the best possible outcomes and support for people in our areas. And we've already got our regional and rural pharmacies really struggling already from cuts to their incomes, and now they could well have, given that some of these people are the small businesses who employ either over 15, or it's not really clear whether it's just through this legislation, small businesses under 15 employees or what. It's hard to tell from what's in this business. Those same businesses actually employ over 15 and could well now have a union delegate walking into their pharmacies. Now, many of these small businesses employ so many local people in flexible arrangements, and they are designed to suit both. And I'm really, really concerned about the impact that this will have on our wonderful small businesses. The courageous people who mortgage their homes just to have a go, the ones who offer other Australians a job. That's what they do. And it's in this, it almost treats them as if they are the enemy instead of the people who employ other Australians. They're already so badly affected by those higher and higher costs of doing business, whether it's energy, input costs, inflation, business interest rates and higher insurance premiums, just for a start. And these are the same businesses that can't afford a dedicated HR person to go through all of these laws and say, oh, what do we have to do as a small business? Those people don't even know what's hit them yet. And I am really concerned for them. And if you're the small business employer who can't afford to retain all or some of their workers because of measures in this bill, workers will lose their jobs. There isn't a never-ending bucket in these small businesses. Some work on very fine profit margins. And I know a number of business people and small business people who work and pay their employees instead of themselves. So anything that adds to the problems for those businesses, I just shake my head at. And it is really tough in many small businesses right now. They do not need this other layer of complexity and concern right at this moment. And as I said, it is not clear at all who in small business will be impacted by what's in this bill. And, who will be covered, who won't be covered, whether it's dairy businesses employing certain numbers of people who are milking cows and doing all sorts of other jobs on that farm, rearing calves, in the vegetable, fruit and horticulture and viticulture small businesses, the cropping and shearing space. Well, these are all the small businesses in rural and regional Australia that could well have the AWU at their gate. No notice, turn up at our farmhouse, where the business is run out of a farmer's home. So Labor's members may not have set foot on a farm to think that we all have separate offices that we run our businesses out of. Well, no, it's our home. And so a delegate can simply, if he or she has a suspicion, no actual evidence, can actually demand entry. They'll have a virtual proxy law enforcement role where their employer, be they a farmer, a small business owner or a major employer, doesn't have rights in this space. They can come into our homes and demand to inspect any work, any process or object. They can interview any person. They can demand or inspect a copy any records or documents, including those on computers, and take samples of goods and substances. In the process, subject members of that family to interrogation. And can you imagine the amount of personal information that sits on those computers, given that they're part and parcel of how we operate? And who will have access to this, and what are the responsibilities of those people in the information that they have access to and what they actually do with it? That small business owner or farmer has no right of refusal or legal representation at that time. And I see this as a really gross, ugly invasion and trampling of individual rights in a country that is supposed to be a democracy. There's another really serious issue here, because we, the farmers, we're clearly targets. The Minister Burke said so last week in question time, where he actually accused we, the farmers of this country, of wage theft. He also expressed his contempt for the NFF. So, unfortunately, we need to expect that the unions will be knocking on our doors as a result of this. And this coming from the Minister, who in this bill has given himself extraordinary powers, the constant change potential, the uncertainty that that creates for business. I think it's at least 32 cases he can unilaterally and independently change the regulations, and that happens without parliamentary scrutiny or debate. So who knows what's going to be changed next? So the government also needs to clarify for our farmers, is it our biosecurity on our properties that we work so hard to protect? We guard it jealously and what we do is extraordinary. Which has priority? Our biosecurity and those gates that we have with the notice that says you must contact us before you come on. Who has rights? What right has priority? That of biosecurity on our property, or those who choose to turn up because they have a suspicion that something's happening on our properties? We've seen that threat of foot and mouth disease, so I just wonder, where does biosecurity sit in relation to this bill when you're talking about farmers? I also have some serious concerns. I'll be closely watching what happens with, in the transport and logistics space. I will keep a close eye on what happens here. Another sector that will be under the pump will be the building and construction industry, especially, I suspect, residential construction sectors. And there's thousands, I think 400,000, contracted independent tradies in that sector. At a time when we're seeing building and construction companies going into administration at a rate we've not seen before, I think, in our history. And so this increases the complexity and cost of construction. And I'm already aware of builders in the southwest who've historically delivered fixed-price contracts, and they've actually delivered them in spite of the fact that it's cost them to do so. And they've had to absorb those additional inflationary costs in their own business. So they're already not making profits, and we're going to find out what actually same job, same pay means in this space, I think, very quickly, and how that interacts with Tier 1, Tier 2 type contracts and the current arrangements that exist for delivering major project. We've got a whole lot of different subbies working on various parts of the work at any given time, and they have to come and go because the weather changes. The job itself changes when something doesn't turn up on time, or there's a shortage, as we've seen in the logistics and supply chains. So there's any number of hold-ups and changes that have to be made as a project is being built, and flexibility is the absolute key. So labour hire and subbies are necessities on these sites. So I think we'll be seeing, we need to be measuring how much this bill and the measures in it will add to construction costs, not just on major projects, but for new home owners building their first new or other home, and what that will do across the board for the cost of compliance. And I think there are some really significant potential impacts from this bill. We've even seen our sporting codes expressing concerns about what it's going to do to the arrangements they have to keep their sporting codes operating. That's just another one that we keep hearing about. And I think we certainly need to keep a very close eye on what the numbers are in trainees and apprentices and apprenticeships, and how this will impact, measures in this bill will impact on the decisions that employers will make in this space. Now, like many members and most members in this House, I have some very, very good businesses in my patch, and I think they have a right to be very concerned about the judgments that are being made in this bill, that they are not caring and actually providing extraordinary opportunities for the people who work with them and for them, and the remuneration that they receive for the work that they do. But that relationship between employer and employee is so critical, and anything that interferes with that as well in a detrimental way should be of concern to everybody in this place. There needs to be, as we see so frequently when I talk to my employers, especially those right now who can't even get employees, they are desperate, and they just need people who can come and work with them and for them. And when they do find them, and they do come, and they do their best, they are incredibly grateful for that work, and they train them, and they put time and effort into getting these people to where they need them to be. So that type of relationship we need to be fostering in everything that happens in this House, and anything that comes between those relationships is of great concern to me, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you.